Okay, hello and welcome to the video. My name is Wade Daniel Smith, and in this video, I'm addressing myself to Isshinryu Karate and the real black belt syllabus versus a McDojo black belt syllabus. Um, First of all, let me address myself to spin kicks. I have literally thousands of hours of full contact sparring and fighting experience against pro boxers and against second degree black belt and should have been third degree black belt karate fighters, and a couple times a fourth degree black belt karate fighter, namely my own chief instructor. Um, and I have never, ever been kicked in the head, ever. Um, you can try to kick me 50 times in a row in the head, and I don't care if you're Bruce Lee or if you're Israel Adesanya. You are not going to hit me in the head with a head kick. There's just no way. That's the slowest attack there is, and I can see it coming a mile away, even though I got bad eyes, and I can see it coming a mile away. All right? Um, and I don't understand why these bozos get knocked out by head kicks because they're not paying attention and they drop their guard is the number one reason. But that's what the first thing I'm addressing myself to is because there was this McDojo online where an instructor had posted about a 5 or 6 minute video of his supposed black belt students practicing kicks, and most of it is spin kicks and bullshitto stuff that does not work in a real fight, spinning roundhouses and stuff like that. And I posted to him and I said, I know it's a striking only class that they don't do any grappling, and I posted back. I posted to him and I said I literally bet you $1,000 that I could beat any two of your students in a 1-on-2 handicap. And somebody else saw it and what I posted and posted a laughing sign at it. And he looked at the video too, and he's like, I can't. He's like, holy f this! I can't believe you call these black belts. Is this what they calling black belts now? Um, right? You you can't make me believe that you actually think you're going to win a fight like that. A spin kick, the reason it doesn't work, there's a couple reasons. A basic law of mathematics is if the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, that implies you ought to throw mostly straight punches and straight kicks and use hook punches and roundhouse kicks very sparingly. That's a basic law of mathematics. You use a hook punch just wide enough to get around the opponent's guard to try to open up their guard so your other hand can then come through with a straight punch or an uppercut. You don't use a hook punch because you like throwing hook punches. Same thing with a roundhouse kick. You use a roundhouse kick to try to open up a straight line opening in their guard. You don't use the roundhouse kick because you like throwing roundhouse kicks. That would be stupid. All right. All that stuff with Jean-Claude Van Damme and even Chuck Norris throwing 50 roundhouse kicks in a fight is complete nonsense. And it's actually even nonsense when Israel Adesanya does it. That's why he gets beat by Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. And I even told him that. I said, don't try throwing 50 roundhouse kicks against Dricus du Plessis, and don't try framing with your jab arm or you're going to get beat. All right? And he got beat, So bullshitto McDojo syllabus is that they think that teaching you spin kicks and, punching on those little hand mitts and stuff, targets, that's fine. Hand targets is fine, but that's not to replace real full contact sparring. Bullshitto is point sparring. That's not real fight science, and that's not real martial art. Point karate has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with real fighting. Nothing. All right. That's why the Olympic gold medalist got beat up by an unskilled attacker after the 2020 Olympics that was actually held in 21. Remember? Two of them, a Taekwondo black belt and the gold medalist, a Taekwondo gold medalist and a karate gold medalist, both got beat up by unskilled attackers within a week of the Olympics ending that year. And it was on worldwide television that they got beat up by unskilled attackers, but they were supposedly the world champion black belt. Because point sparring does not teach you how to fight for real. It doesn't. All right. And a striking only class hardly even teaches you how to fight for real. You need grappling. You need jiu-jitsu. You need Japanese jiu-jitsu for standing, and you need Gracie Brazilian. So what is a real black belt syllabus? Whenever I was first introduced to Isshinryu karate and Japanese jiu-jitsu, it was explained that for every 2 belt ranks you go up, you should be able to win a 1 versus 2 handicap against the previous position. All right, is the first thing, is what the belt progression means. All right, if you're actually training correctly. White belts learn 15 basic hand strikes, 8 blocks, but we don't really have dedicated blocks in Isshinryu karate because we say every strike can be a block and every block can be a strike. But they're taught separately for simplicity's sake. And then 15 basic kicks and knee strikes. That's what, and white belts also learn the Sword of Destruction, which is actually an advanced hammerlock combination, and 5 swords, which is an advanced counterattack combination at white belt, because we want them to know something that's going to finish off an opponent, even if they only take 1 self-defense class. Then yellow belt works on basics more, and yellow belt learns the instructor's personal local kata that he makes in bunkai, and yellow belt also learns roughly 20 total submissions. I can list about 10 or 12 of them by name still. I don't remember the exact order that we learned all of them, but I learned 8 of these on the very first submissions day in 1992. The frontless wrist lock, the full wrist lock, reverse wrist lock, the rear naked choke that chokes for air, and then the rear naked choke or sleeper hold that chokes for blood. That's 5. The cross arm breaker, full arm bar, reverse arm bar. That's 9. Figure 4 ankle lock and reverse figure 4 ankle lock, and inside heel hook and outside heel hook. That's actually 13. I learned, I think, maybe all of those within the first day or two. 8 of them on the first day, and the other ones on the second day of submissions class. And I probably learned about 7 more or so as a yellow belt. And then you learn about 20 more at each belt rank. Which I didn't even realize there were that many submissions, did you? Because they never use them in the UFC, because most of them don't know them. Most of them only know between 5 and 15 total submissions. And that's all you ever see them use. But I know over 200. So then at each belt rank you go up in Isshinryu karate, you learn about 20 more submissions. Orange belt learns Sanchin Kata, which is the most important thing of Sanchin Kata is just the breathing and muscle tension and flexion exercises, and the psychological aspect of being able to take a hit and not flinch from it. All right. The psychological warfare of ignoring pain and ignoring the impact of a blow and just fighting through it. The kata itself is not that spectacular. Matter of fact, Isshinryu's Sanchin Kata is really degenerate, and they probably need to go back to using the Uchiru Sanchin Kata, because the Isshinryu version of Sanchin Kata is incredibly simplistic and doesn't really teach you much of anything other than the breathing exercise. But, it is what it is. That's what I was first taught. Then once you get from orange belt to blue belt, at blue belt you learn Seisan Kata and Bunkai and another 20 submissions. Seisan is incredible. Seisan is golden. It's the secret to winning the handicap matches and stuff. And so an orange belt should probably be able to beat 2 no stripe white belts in a handicap match. A blue belt should be able to beat 2 no stripe yellow belts in a handicap match, and so forth. All right. Then at light green belt, you learn Seiunchin Kata and about another 20 submissions and the Bunkai of light green belt. And you also learn Tokumini no Kun, Okinawan Bo Kata and Bunkai. Then at dark green belt, you learn Naihanchi Kata. Most important move in there is probably the Naihanchi smash, but you also learn elbow strike, the Naihanchi clenched elbow strike. But you also learn leg checking and stuff. You already know leg checking by then, but sweeps, avoiding sweeps and leg checks, reinforced blocking, reinforced striking, double punches, which are actually a submission and throwing maneuver, not really a double strike. That sort of stuff in Naihanchi Kata. Naihanchi Kata is one of the oldest and most disputed katas in all of martial arts. And nobody's exactly sure when it was first invented. Nobody's exactly sure where it comes from. They know it's been around for hundreds of years, though, at least. And but it's golden. It's good stuff. Then that's dark green belt. Then at purple belt, you learn Wansu kata and Keanu Sai kata. And about yet another 20 submissions. And then at first degree brown belt, I believe you learn Chinto kata at first degree brown belt, and about another 20 submissions. Then second degree brown belt, you learn Kuzanku kata, and somewhere in there you learn Hamahiga Tuifa kata at one of the brown belt levels. And about another 20 submissions. And then third degree brown belt, you learn yet another 20 submissions and Sun Tzu kata. And then once you learn all that, you start your black belt testing. All right. Then for black belt testing, they are going to take multiple brown and or black belts and have them attack you in 2-on-1 handicap scenarios, and you have to win the fight against a 2-on-1 handicap. And if you can't win, that's just 1/5, 1/4, or 1/5 of the total. The next step is they're going to take a brown belt and give them an eskrima stick and or an Okinawan bow at a different time, and they're going to be told to attack you full force, and they've been trained how to use the thing without screwing up too often, and your job is to disarm them without getting hit. And if you succeed, you pass that portion of the test. If you fail, you fail the black belt test. Next, you got to actually demonstrate proficiency in all 200 some odd submissions that you're supposed to know by then, which takes about 6 months worth of testing. And you got to demonstrate proficiency in all of the bunkai of all of the kata you're supposed to know by then, which takes, you've been testing on all this stuff all along, but it takes about 6 months worth of testing that overlaps with the other 6 months. And then you got the physical fitness requirement, which among other things includes running a 1.5 miles in about 10 minutes flat, which isn't even that good of a pace, but it just proves that you can dust some, unskilled thugs that might be outnumbering you 3 or more to 1 in a gang rape situation or something like that. But other physical fitness requirements are push-ups and sit-ups and, basic Marine Corps style shuttle hops and stuff like that. I would recommend that any serious person that's training for martial arts for self-defense or circuit training, you need to be able to do 200 to 300 push-ups per day, basically 2 sets of 50 push-ups, and then 5 to 10 sets of 20 push-ups on top of that. And you need to be able to do about 200 lunges or jump squats per day is what I would recommend for working your legs. Not to mention sit-ups or crunches or something like that. Probably 10 sets of 20 crunches, but also make sure you do at least one set of max sit-ups in 2 minutes. Once per day, 4 or 5 times per week. But you got to leave like at least a day or two of rest once in a while so that you give your muscles time to recover. All right. And full contact sparring in addition to the kumite drills and bunkai drills and all of your submissions training. You have full contact sparring starting in the standing position. All right. One of the problems that I had whenever I had joined the Gracie Dojo after all these years of karate training is they always want to start their grappling from the kneeling position on the ground. And I'm like, real fights don't start like this, and neither do professional fights. Professional prize fights don't start. Every fight starts from a standing position about 10 to 15 feet away from one another. It doesn't start 3 feet away from one another in a kneeling position. And I tried explaining that to them, that what they're doing is not representative of real fight skills. I already knew almost everything they taught anyway. Matter of fact, I knew everything they taught. I just needed a small refresher on some of the ground grappling. I mean, let me rattle off the black belt syllabus of additional submissions that are taught at one belt level or another. You got the accolade, you got the cross face, you got the calf crusher, you got front scarf hold, reverse scarf hold. I think I already said reverse figure 4 and figure 4 ankle locks. and inside and outside heel hooks. So let me not repeat them again. You got this mandible claw-like thing under the jaw that dislocates the jaw. That's good for street self-defense. It also allows you to rip your opponent's eye out simultaneously. Good for street self-defense, but probably banned in MMA. It dislocates the jaw and is basically going to make the person pass out in agony, or cry like a baby. Filter thing under the nose that I call Vice, alternatively. Of course, you guillotine, your neck breaker, reverse neck breaker, standing back breaker, sidearm bar. What else? Double cross arm wrist lock with the other guy can't even tap out. He'll have to shout, "I quit." Of course, a hammer lock, full Nelson. Full Nelson's pretty weak. It's pretty easy to get out of a full Nelson, so I don't really necessarily consider it a valid submission. But you are taught it for the sake of learning how to get out of it. It's pretty easy to get out. All you have to do is lift your arms straight up and relax and slide right out of it. And no matter how strong they are, you'll slip right out of it. So I don't really consider it a valid submission. But it'll hurt you if you don't know how to get out of it. But if you know how to get out of it, you can get out of it in a split second. I mean, there are literally, like I said, 200 submissions. It's just I don't even remember the names of all of them, because when you haven't used the name to describe them all in 20 years, they start to blend together, and you start to forget some of the names, and then it's like I can still name 50 something of them all together, but I just got to think of them just a minute. Anyway, what a scarf hold is, this is one you probably have not seen in MMA, although it does appear in Greco-Roman wrestling sometimes. You take the base joint of your thumb, right, let me see if I can get it on camera, right here, and you put it into your opponent's sternum, and let's say you're grappling on the ground, and so you're on top of them, and you're starting to get their back, but you haven't taken their back from the rear naked choke position nor the guillotine position. You've taken their back under their armpits, and you grab them from behind, and you put the base of that digit of your thumb into their sternum, and you lock your other hand on, and you pull and you crank as tight as you can. And this restricts air. It hurts like hell, first of all, because there's actually a lot of nerve endings right on your sternum, but it hurts like hell. It restricts the diaphragm so the person can't breathe correctly, and it even restricts blood flow to the heart by restricting the aorta. All right. And so the person will gradually lose strength and endurance over the next 30 seconds to a minute or two, depending on how long you're able to hold it on them correctly, because they won't be able to breathe correctly, and their heart won't even be beating correctly. Well, that's what a scarf hold or reverse scarf hold is. It's not a very fast submission, but it's pretty effective if you can't do anything else to them. It's kind of like putting a body triangle on somebody, but with your arms instead of your legs, if you want to think of it that way, because it's going to wear them down over 30 seconds to a minute or two. It's not going to put them out in 10 or 15 seconds like a blood choke would around the neck. But it's still an effective way of wearing your opponent out, because it costs them a lot more energy to try to breathe correctly than it does for you to hold it on them correctly, especially if you're already on top of their back. So that's like if you got them around under their arms rather than on top of under their neck. If that's how you ended up grabbing them, you can scarf hold them until you get into a choke position later, until you wear them down and get them into a choke position. All right. Reverse neck breaker probably needs to be banned in MMA. Neck breaker needs to be banned. Pile drivers already are banned. Standing back breaker does not need to be banned, because in spite of the name, the chances of breaking your opponent's back or neck is pretty low. They're going to tap out within a few seconds of it getting on them. And they'll tap out, and they might try to punch you in the face or something while you're putting it on them, but they're not going to be able to hit you, because they would have to get around your shoulder, and it doesn't work. We've tested it. and it's not possible to get a solid hit on the person applying the submission once you get into position to put the standing backbreaker on somebody. They're screwed. Let's see. There's that pressure point in behind your kneecap that, I think you're actually allowed to step on, and you're not allowed to stomp on in MMA, but you're allowed to step on and press down onto it and ground your opponent by the knee, if I remember correctly. So then you can apply a chokehold, like a rear naked choke or a reverse guillotine or a guillotine or whatever to your opponent from there, or a standing backbreaker variant. Small joint manipulation is banned in MMA, but in street self-defense, it's perfect. All right, you want to grab, when you go to put somebody in the front wrist lock in street self-defense, you actually want to grab these 3 fingers, not even all 4 of them, but like the 2 middle ones or those 3, and crank on those 3, and it gives even more leverage against the wrist, and it will probably break 2 or 3 of their fingers at once and break their wrist. Whereas if you grab all 4, like you're required to do when you do the front wrist lock in MMA, the hand is a little bit stronger and the wrist is a little bit stronger against that motion. So small joint manipulation of grabbing individual digits is banned in MMA, but evidently wrist locks are not. They just don't know how to do wrist locks because they claim that they're low percentage, and they're not low percentage. I can do wrist locks well enough to beat second-degree black belts by submitting them with wrist locks. Real second-degree black belts, not paper second-degree black belts. All right, what else? But anyway, there's roughly 200 submissions on the real Isshinryu karate black belt syllabus. I just haven't named them all and can't remember the names of all of them because, like I said, it's been 24 years since I've used some of them. But basically everything they do in MMA, you learn by the time you're an orange belt in Isshinryu karate, like white, yellow, orange. You learn about half of the stuff that they know by the time you're yellow belt testing for orange, and then by the time you're orange testing for blue, you know everything they know, and then some, because they don't train in as much as you think they do, and about 3/4 of them are wrestling or grappling specialists that don't train in punching. We know how to train a punch in Isshinryu karate. First of all, you got to do a lot of push-ups or work with iron weights, but and you got to hit a bag. I mean, like you got to work a standing water bag or a hanging water bag or a hanging or standing sand bag. But anyway, you work your heavy bag, and a 185-pound fighter ought to have at least 1,000-pound punch whenever they're in the prime of their life, 20 to 30 years old, and if assuming they've been healthy their whole life. Unfortunately, I got sick with a genetic variant of type 2 diabetes and some other medical problems around 24 years old, and it took a lot out of me. But in the prime of your life, say 20 years old or so, you ought to have 1,000-pound punch if you're a 185-pound man, at least. And you ought to have a 2,800-pound, roughly, front thrust kick or push kick, is what you ought to have. And I was told that by ex-Marine who was an EOD, all right, before they had the modern special forces. So, that's the formula, that it should be 2,000 pounds plus 4 times your body weight for a man's front push kick or thrust kick, which is almost 3 times what your punch should be. 2.5 to 3 times what your punch is. So, and yes, I punch harder than probably anybody except the biggest heavyweights or the strongest heavyweights in MMA. I probably punch harder than Alex Pera with my right hand, even though my left hand is 50% numb and both feet are 50% numb. My right cross probably still hits harder than his right cross, is how hard I used to be able to punch. And I'm, like I said, 24 years out of full-time practice. But I used to be able to punch a standing water bag and send it airborne and flip it over backwards and I'm talking about a 225-pound one. You should be able to kick it and send it flying, easily 10 feet across a room until it gets slammed into something, and then only then would it stop. That would be a front thrust kick or front push kick to do that. So that's a real black belt or a real brown belt, real black belt level fighter. That's what your black belt syllabus is. You should be able to beat two, second Q certainly or first Qs in a handicap match. You should be able to beat a second or first Q, second or third degree brown belt attacking you with a eskrima stick, and you start with no weapon, and you should disarm their eskrima stick without getting hit. All right. And then that's what your fighting skill level ought to be compared to other non-black belts. Is you should be able to beat any two brown belts allied against you, and you should be able to disarm a brown belt who has a melee weapon, either an eskrima stick or an Okinawan bow. And like I said, you need to know your 200 submissions and all of your bunkai of all of your katas to be a black belt, because the bunkai is going to teach you to habitually do the correct thing in every hand play situation and foot play situation against a single attacker or two attackers. And some of the bunkai is obviously banned in MMA because you can't, like the dude said, you can't do Wansu Kata bunkai against an opponent in MMA because you'll kill them. The hospitalization rate would be 90% in sport fighting if you used Wansu Kata bunkai. So Wansu Kata is like 99% street self-defense and military application. It's not really relevant to sport fighting because most of the techniques in there, you can modify the technique to be a sport relevant technique, but most of the techniques in there are maiming and lethal techniques. So, but a real black belt is supposed to be able to defend himself in a life or death situation, even against somebody with a knife. All right. So that's what the real black belt syllabus is. All right. All right. This went on a lot longer than I thought it was. It's up to 27 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and end it. Thank you for watching it. If anybody does watch it, hopefully a few people will watch it. I'm not a very popular person because I'm very opinionated and I don't change my opinion to please other people. So I don't have very many views on some of my videos, but some of my videos do become surprisingly popular for some reason. All right. So thank you very much.